Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to Humanities Cafe. We're glad you could be with us today. We're going to be talking about literacy, which is at its very basic definition, the ability to read and write. There's many aspects to different types of literacy, but for the purposes of our conversation today, we're going to talk about reading. And unlike language, literacy isn't a pre-programmed human skill. It's a human invention. So, like how children learn to walk without being taught, but they don't know how to drive a car. So similarly, literacy is something that must be learned, and therefore it must be taught. And recent headlines have shared that youth literacy has been continually declining for a number of years, not just in South Dakota, but nationwide. So it's an important issue and one that might be a bit difficult to understand. And that's what we're going to talk about today. We're honored to have joining us today three very knowledgeable professionals in the field of literacy education, and I'm going to have them introduce themselves one at a time. Let's see, I have Hanna, you're up first on my screen, so I'll let you start.
Okay, well, thank you very much. Yeah, my name is Hanna Glissendorf. I'm the Director of Early Education at United Way of the Black Hills. And what I do here is basically work with a few different programs, including our Black Hills Reads initiative, which is all about increasing early learning and early literacy opportunities for kids in the Black Hills. And then also I work with Early Learner Rapid City and Early Learner South Dakota when it comes to trying to improve access to early learning opportunities and childcare and things like that. So that's a little bit about me.
Okay, next up I have Laura.
Yes, I'm Laura Kelly, and I'm a family engagement learning specialist. I work for Black Hills Special Services, and our mission really is to build strong communities by helping individuals and organizations just reach their full potential. And we have 5 different divisions. So if you've heard of Black Hills Special Services, you might have heard of our Development and Disabilities Division, our Education and Workforce Division, Compass Partners and Learning Division, Health and Human Services, and then our Community and Family Services, which includes our statewide Family Engagement Center. So we work with schools, families, communities, because we believe that it's a shared responsibility to make each child's learning potential, and we have to work together in a community to do that too.
Thank you. And Doris Ann.
I'm Doris Ann Mertz. This is my 3rd year being the Custer School District Library Coordinator. I was the Custer County Library Director for 11 years prior to that. So in that role, my literacy efforts were more towards the early literacy, getting kids ready to read when they got to school, those efforts, the story times and stuff for preschoolers and toddler times and stuff, and preventing the summer slide with summer reading. But now that I'm in the school, I have a different role and stuff in how our library and our library programs can support the our new reading curriculums that are based on the science of reading. So.
Okay, thank you for your introductions, ladies. I am so excited to have this conversation because here at the Humanities Council, literacy is a big deal for us. We are very much, into the whole literacy and justice for all is what I call it. But where we talk about sometimes the statistics, they're important, right? But there's two different sources of statistics. There's the NAEP and the state report card. So who can tell us the difference? Anybody? Which of you guys wants to take a stab at that? Doris Ann?
The NAEP, it's a national test, so that's helpful in that we compare across states and how the nation's doing as a whole and how states are doing as a whole. And it's only given to certain grades like 4th grade and 8th grade. We're mostly concerned with the 4th grade one is what we look at a lot. And you can't break it down and see how an individual school did. The testers come from outside the school and they have their own devices and they give the kids tests on those. The state testing, we can break it out by school. We can look at how individual kids are doing, and it's offered, when at the elementary school level, it's offered 3rd through 8th grade. So we can see not only how the 4th grade did this year, but how they did when they were in 3rd grade, and if there's been growth in how they did in 3rd grade in ELA. And so it gives us a lot a lot of data to look into and see if what we're doing is making a difference. But the NAEP, to see how we're doing as a nation, is also good, and to see who's breaking the trends. Like if most of the nation is on a downward trend since COVID, but there are some going up, then we can look and see, what are they doing, and can we do what they're doing and make it better. So.
Okay, thank you for that. Because when I was looking into this, according to the NAEP statistics for 2024, South Dakota has a 68% non-proficiency rate, and that's the national average. But across the nation, there was zero improvement. And 47 jurisdictions out of 52 had no significant change. Five did drop, and South Dakota was one of those 5. It looked like we declined 4 points since 2022. So again, they're saying 68% non-proficiency on the NAEP statistics, but our state report card has a non-proficiency rating of 49%, and that's like almost a 20% difference. And I was asking myself, why is there such a difference? But it makes sense when you consider that the NAEP is a national standard. It's a universal, across the board, everybody gets the same test. And the state report card then is based on state standards, correct? So they're not going to match up with any other state. Am I reading that right, or am I totally off track here?
I don't understand why there's such a big difference. So I just try to look at them individually and look at the trends within each one of what's going on, because none of us get to see what's tested on the NAEP to know why our kids do worse at that. So, but I think you can still get information from the trends on what direction we're going in.
Okay. Well, so we're going to get into the nitty gritty then. So in a nutshell, neither one of the test results is like great news. We got some work to do. So in the history, what is the history of teaching literacy, of teaching reading? How do we start, like way back in the day? I know 1800s with Horace Mann is a little too far to go back, but how did we start? What did we start with, and how did we progress to where we are?
Well, I'd be happy to start tackling that one anyways, Laura Kelly here. So I was doing, again, kind of looking back over as they talked about the whole word approach, looking at a word all together. And I reflected back even when I was in elementary school, looking at doing those sight word flashcards and that memorization. And I remember having to stay after school and practice those because I wasn't very good at that, memorization part. And then, we moved into the whole language method too. So I think it's really interesting because it's not like as we move through this, we're just dropping necessarily portions. We did like lean away from phonics at one point, and now we're leaning back into it again. But, one of the reasons they call it a pendulum is because we're still on the same track. We're just not necessarily in the same spot. Our focus might be on something different. But when we look at whole language, we really talk about the construction or the meaning, which was like in the 1980s-ish of the word. And we have to think about our personal experience. So that changes a lot in what your background is, what you're going to be able to pull from those context clues. So we're looking at that a lot in the science of reading too. If you're having different backgrounds, different experiences, how are you going to read the context clues and the pictures and things differently than another child would? So, I mean, thinking about that. And then the balanced literacy going into what we previously are kind of swinging from in the 1990s till 2000. I really remember this as I was a title teacher and also in the school libraries at that time. And that's when we had the leveled text. That's when the guided reading came, and our libraries were filled with a lot of the books that we were reading because kids were in those small groups. And they were having a lot of discussions over versus a basal reader where you had a little segment of a story. It's a more longer, more complex story. And then, you're looking at attempting to understand the words that you don't know by the context clues, which can also lead to some guessing or getting kind of close to a word, but not specifically getting that word, but still moving on because you're gaining meaning. And we still want them to be able to decode those words and understand what that word is, which gets more into the science of reading. I mean, that's a very quick overview, and I don't know if Hanna or Doris Ann want to add to that at all, but.
It's funny, I was going to toss out there when the group of us spoke a little briefly before we actually came on, and I kind of showed my age a little bit because I remember phonics, and I remember the Dick and Jane books and the whole look-say method or whatever, and that was part of whole language. But then when I was researching this topic a little bit, I came into, it was actually an article that I read in a magazine about Lucy Calkins, the founder or the expert behind what's called balanced literacy. And when you were talking about, Laura, the having to have a idea of what that word could mean. You know, meanings are going to be different to different people. And one of the criticisms that I found in that balanced literacy approach was that the founder, or Lucy Calkins, had said, well, kids can get the context of what that is based off of the monograms on their towels in the bathroom. Ooh. So a lot of people were like, wait a minute, that's kind of, you know, not everybody's got monogram towels. So there's a lot of different moving parts to this whole, you know, and the big words, you know, balanced literacy and whole language, and kind of what Laura is talking about. It's the pendulum, like she said, isn't swinging way, you know, it's not extreme. We've been here before. And so what are it, well, recently, I think within the last year in 2024, they started implementing the science of reading as a method of instruction in South Dakota, right? That's kind of the official.
Yeah,
South
I think
Dakota
even as of
literacy
2023, they were starting to implement that. And like you said, it was selective. It wasn't everyone doing that. But yes, it has been, you know, in the works for a while now. And then as you see, we are gaining momentum on that quite a bit as we go. But yes, I would say even before we're just hearing a lot more about it. It's in legislation now and things like that. But I wouldn't say this is just bam, popped out of nowhere. It's been something building to this point. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Well, and I'm going to ask you to explain science of reading. And I know, Doris Ann, you have a really good grasp on this, and I appreciate you explaining it to me the way you did. But it seems to me that it's just kind of a return to reading instruction from a generation ago. You know, we're just kind of going back to what we know works from before. So how would you explain in a nutshell what the science of reading is? Because it sounds intimidating, but what is it?
The science of reading, it's a body of research that tells us what works as far as reading comprehension. And it is more, one part of that focus is more on decoding, learning how to sound out words. It's an emphasis on phonics, which is what I grew up on. And my kids also grew up on phonics, even though they are much younger. They had Saxon phonics as kindergartners. So that's what I'm familiar with. But it's not just the word recognition in the simple view of reading. That's one part, one word recognition, and the other part is your language comprehension. So the word recognition side is like, even if you can sound out and decode a word, but you've never heard of it, then you still won't have any reading comprehension. So the language comprehension side has your background knowledge and vocabulary in that, and there's a lot of other stuff in there too. But like if you never heard of a word, even if you decode it, the sentence is still not going to make sense. So it takes both. It takes being able to decode the words and recognize the words, and having some language comprehension, knowing how words work, and just like that ed at the end means it's past tense, things like that. They come in on the language comprehension side of things. So it's very it's more complex. If people are interested, Scarborough's Reading Rope sums it up pretty good about all the things that come into play in the science of reading approach to reading.
Well, and kind of the way I think I grasped it is that it's kind of an approach where letters make sounds, sounds make words, and words make meanings and concepts. Is that kind of how the steps progress with science of reading?
And it's very the approach to teaching science of reading, it's a structured literacy approach, and it's very explicit instruction. Like the teachers have to be taught how to teach this way, and they get up and teach the class very explicitly. There's no encouraging guesswork or anything, and it's very systematic, and it builds on everything you've learned. And I think it's very effective. We've had good, like Laura said, it's not necessarily new for our school. When I came in 22, 23, the teachers they were going to Big Sky Literacy Conference in Montana and getting really excited about it. And then last year we bought decodable libraries, and we've just been kind of progressing with it. And we have had, I know that NAEP, which test, we look at the 4th grade scores in NAEP, that's the national test. But in Custer, we had our proficiency rating was 77% for 4th graders. And that's cool. And you may think, well, maybe that's just kind of a smart class. But some of the data, looking at the growth is what I like to look at. And last year as 3rd graders, they were only 46% proficient. So we're doing something right. We're on the right track, and it's but we changed a couple things. We're doing the science of reading, and we're also becoming a PLC school, professional learning communities, where the teachers get to collaborate. So we're throwing a couple of things in there to make things different. So I think we're on the right track, and I think science of reading based curriculum is part of that.
I'm going to take a break here for a minute. And I know you guys have questions. So we're going to take a break before we move on to like switching over to, okay, so what do we do with this science of reading, and how does this look for South Dakota? Who has a question? Is there anybody who has a question, comment, concern, observation? And if you don't want to raise your hand or speak up, you could put the question in the chat as well. Nobody? Okay. Well, we're going to talk when part of what is brought this into the headlines is legislation. House Bill 1022 recently passed, and it was a 4-year statewide teacher training effort that allocates $6 million. So $6 million over 4 years statewide, and it's includes teachers training on a voluntary basis at any school in South Dakota, public, private, tribal, or BIE, and working with universities to help them adopt science of reading training for new teachers. So people are noticing. It looks like we're moving in the direction of, hey, we need to do something. And I'm 100% in agreement of that. The thing I noticed, a lot of what the hype, if for lack of a better word, behind the science of reading is looking at, where have school districts implemented this? What states have implemented this, and what's the outcomes? And a lot of what I've seen with the comparisons is to Mississippi. Mississippi has traditionally had pretty low literacy scores, and they implemented the science of reading in 2013. And they've seen significant improvement. The difference that I came across that maybe concerns me a little bit is that Mississippi in 2013, when they first implemented this, they started with about $13 million for 1 year. $13 million for 1 year, and then upped it in 2014 to $15 million a year, but also included a $40 million a year allocation for pre-K and early learning of literacy. So my question then is, we have $6 million over 4 years. That's $1.5 million a year. What do we do first? What do you guys think is the first thing that we need to, what's the best approach? And what do we do if there might be, additional allocations put out there by our state legislature, but what's the best use of that 1.5 million per year over the next 4 years?
I'll jump in here and just say, I guess from my perspective, I'm always advocating for more support when it comes to early childhood education. We all know that or it's pretty well known now that the first 5 years of a child's life are super important when it comes to developing all sorts of skills, whether that is literacy skills or development overall when it comes to movement and hearing and all of those sorts of things. And I feel like if we're not really prioritizing those first 5 years and making sure that there is support so that kids can start developing the baseline skills that they need to then be able to actually take in the science of reading curriculum when they're in school, we're going to have more issues than we think. So I would say that it's probably pretty important to try and emphasize or try and support more of our early childhood education programs and that kind of thing. I don't know how much more I can say on that front necessarily when it comes to like actual legislation and everything, because that's not necessarily my wheelhouse. But
Yeah.
But I just know that it's always important to support the early development before we even look at grade level stuff.
Well, and that was part of what I noticed with that legislation, and it's not necessarily about the legislation itself, but there's a focus on, you know, teaching the teachers in the schools, the K through 12 schools, and then on universities preparing these teachers to teach in the classroom. But literacy, like you said, Hannah, starts way before you get to the classroom. So with that, I want to talk about then, because, you know, before children can truly develop a love of reading, and before they can read to learn, they have to learn to read. So that's not going to automatically happen when you get to kindergarten. You know, you have to be prepared for that. And I have a granddaughter in kindergarten, and it's so much fun watching her learn to read. But if they're not prepared, it really can be a struggle. So I want to take the next biggest chunk of our time today to talk about what parents and community groups, what nonprofit organizations, libraries, what can we all do to promote the support of literacy development? And so I'm going to start by picking on you, Laura, at the South Dakota Family Engagement Center, because I was looking at the materials that you guys have available and I will put the links in the chat. Like I said, I have a granddaughter in kindergarten, and I found so many fun activities to do with her. But what in a nutshell, what's the best way to start that? To start that early exposure to literacy?
Well, I'm glad you asked that, because that's the first start, is really thinking about it early, you know, thinking about what we are intentionally doing, because we know we're building brains right away, you know, and so at the Statewide Family Engagement Center, I've been fortunate to be part of the early literacy for providers and families training that we offer. And we have a new one starting here March 24th. So this is supporting children's language and literacy skills. Specifically, we talk about literacy-rich environments. So we're surrounding and our families having these literacy-rich environments, which is a wonderful place for the libraries to come in too, because if you don't have those books in your homes, and we're not just talking about books, we're talking about labeling things, we're talking about having educational toys and all those pieces, and the conversations, the rich conversation that needs to be surrounding literacy. If you are seeing it out in the everyday environment and how we're having conversations about letters and sounds when that's happening, even how to read a book, how to turn the pages, all those pieces, that's where it starts, very basic. So the one thing I like about this training is it's for providers, and it doesn't have to be a registered provider. Any provider within South Dakota can come, but they invite their families to come as well, because we're not just teaching educators, as you said, that's very important, but families need to know alongside of that so that they're supporting their child through that. And so it's just a really great partnership that we really encourage, so they can, and it doesn't have to specifically be on the science of reading. Literacy as a whole, you know, we don't have to dive, at this point, we haven't dove into the science of reading in that class, but it may be an additional piece that we add to it so they can understand that transition, which leads me to our next thing. Like, we have the Kindergarten Transition Resource Fair, and that's at General Beetle coming up here in April. And it's talking about guiding you with your child into the kindergarten. Like you said, that's a big change for them, being in the home and then going into the classroom setting. And so we're just there to support, and all that is free. That, you know, those resources are free to our families. And then I've also been a part of their family fun nights. So schools can have us come in and we have STEAM kits and we have literacy nights where we are teaching families how to have fun with literacy and different activities that they can do, playing games or fun interactive activities with movement and literacy. So it isn't just sitting down with a book. Like that is a part of it, but there's a lot more to it too. And so just like teaching in those aspects too, because as we said, if children are going to do well, it's going to be all of those pieces. And, as a community, as an educator, and as a parent, we're working together with that. And we are partnering with the Department of Education on specific training for families around the science of reading too, because we have to, how do they understand if we have these questions as educators and, families have these questions too. And so we're just wanting to, but that's a work in progress, and more information to follow then. But I do highly encourage, because we have, we've paired with Black Hills Reads, we've paired with other organizations. We gave out the book in South Dakota to all first graders, the super ultra mega special super guest book, and we have partnering it with guiding questions and nurturing young readers. So even just knowing the questions to ask and how to further that knowledge of reading while you're reading too. So I know that's a lot, but that's a great place to start, I think.
Well, and I think too, part of it, what jumps out at me too, is the family piece, because when you have adults who are not highly literate, they can't work with children to improve their literacy because they need the help too. So the family piece is so important in getting the whole family involved. And I commend you guys for what you do, because I went and looked on they were activities in literacy. Can you just share with everybody, if anybody looks in the chat, I did put a link there for the Statewide Family Engagement Center and the activities in literacy. Can you just tell us about a couple of them? My favorite is the sight word tower. My granddaughter is eating that up. So
yes, so that's one that we've done at our family fun nights, literacy nights. It's like a big Jenga project, right? Anytime you go big, it's awesome, right? If you can have it in large size. So we can look at compound words, and we can look at, and building that up and reading words and talking about the words. You could even extend it to using them in a sentence. I mean, the great thing about those activities is you can extend the learning, and we have some different options written right into those. Basically, it's like giving you your lesson plan to do, and extending it in that way. So yes, all those resources that we do in our literacy nights, those are available online. You can print them out. You could do them in your library setting. You could do them at home, just looking at different ways to engage and just making it fun. We want reading to be fun. We don't want to lose the joy of that. And, and in our library settings, you'll look around and see all the amazing fun different displays they have and ways to just make that joyful. And we talk about that with parents too. Not making it, if there's a way to engage your child in playing a game or doing something like that with reading versus just that, have to sit down and do it. It can just be a lot more fun. Like we have the kindergarten readiness game that we've created at the Statewide Family Engagement Center to play games to get ready for kindergarten.
I know one of the things that my daughter did before my granddaughter went to kindergarten, those big Lego blocks, the big chunky ones, she put, a C on one and then an AT on like a bigger chunk. And then there's B and then you got the AT and like put those together and, what do you have? I mean, it's just little things that they seem like they start so small, but they're so much fun. And I mean, I think most of us know that kids want to have fun. So what better way to teach literacy than make it fun?
Yeah, and the manipulatives are important at those younger ages. We even have a ping pong vowel, and is it short vowel or long vowel, and you're ping ponging it into it, throwing it into a bucket. I mean, you think, okay, but if you're just doing that, like we said, with flashcards at a table, it's a different feel than being active and moving. And so we do try to do that a lot.
Well, and I noticed another one you had too was show, don't tell, which for lack of a better explanation, there's differential learning, right? Kids learn in different ways. If you have a really, really active kid, show, don't tell I love it. So can you explain, Laura, what show, don't tell is? I love that part of your program too.
Can you give me a little more background on that one? I'm trying to pull it at the top of my head here. There's a lot of different activities, and so I'm trying to remember
kindergarten charades.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So they're looking for the different are they getting the topic and then they have to come up with a word with it?
Right. They have to,
Yes.
it's basically, okay, this is the word, and it kind of puts the connection with, this is what the word looks like, and I'm going to act it out. So they put that connection, that, that whole, where you have the, here, words have meaning, and this is the context of it. There's just so many great activities on the South Dakota Family Engagement website. I absolutely love it. And like you said, I think there's a lot that libraries can do with that too. Not just classrooms, not just homes, but libraries.
Absolutely. And childcare providers as well, as that's what we try to say.
Yeah,
and like you said, with the show don't tell, when you're acting and you're moving, it just helps to get that to memory more, right? Because you're adding movement to it. Yes. Yes.
Yeah, and I did forward your link to a daycare provider that I know, and I thought, she's going to love this. This is great stuff. Because it's some of your programs, the ones that I've paid the most attention to are the ones that are K3, K5, but you don't have to start in kindergarten. You can, this is for even the younger kids. But so I'm gonna give a shout out to all the librarians, because I know there's a few, more than a couple on this guest list here. I adore you. This House Humanities Council adores you. And so I want to hear from not just Doris Ann, who's also been in a library setting. I want to hear from the other librarians that are on this show with us today. Joan, I see you have your hand up. What did you have to say? Joan, did you want to say something?
Yeah, sorry, I was muted. Thank you for bringing the attention to libraries, because my understanding is this 6 million is for the K-12 schools, but not necessarily to support the school library itself or the public libraries or any of the preschool education. So I would think, again, it's not I don't have total understanding of the bills right now, but it seems to me that why aren't we looking at funding those programs in South Dakota? And I'm sure other librarians can add more to that. Thank you.
Do I have any other library? I'm Tara, I'm looking at you. What are your thoughts? I know that you do a lot at the Gregory Public Library with your community. What kind of things are you guys doing there?
So right now with the state, a lot of the bills and stuff that are going on, we use a lot of the databases through the state when we're using, like I have a STEAM club here and we do summer reading programs. And so I've seen that a lot of the databases we use through the state library, some of those in particular have read-alongs as far as their literacy. So they have the video, the audio, and then also you have the words on the screen and the read along, and it almost is like, they're watching a short little cartoon or whatever, and they can hear the story as well, but track the words. And so that's something I use for a lot of the younger and even my older kids, as our STEAM club is the 1st through 5th graders. And I do have a lot of kids within that group that I struggle with trying to understand what they're saying, and so I know that I can tell the kids that come in my library whether they're read to at home, that's a huge thing because of their fluency, that it was pointed out before I was a librarian and was just a patron of the library, and my child was one of the first enrolled with the 1,000 Books Before Kindergarten program. And we really made that a competition in my house of how many books we could read and how fast we could get our 100 book sheet filled, and that my child completed it in 7 months, 1,000 books, and was the top of that to get it done, completed first. But the librarians here at the library I now work at, they were like, wow, just could not believe how young my child was and how fluent in the speech. And then I've been able to track that as well when the kids come up and I engage with them at the circulation desk, and I'm like, you're read to at home, I can tell, like that your parent reads to you because they're so fluent, you can engage it with in a conversation where you're, understanding them. But I have the kids in my STEAM club, that I can tell from some of them that are older that may not have been the case. Or with this whole literacy tracking too, and how everybody talks about them and being national tests and being tested. A lot of kids struggle with anxiety or other, disabilities, and trying to do a test for some of those kids and getting accurate things where they may comprehend it. But like you talked about the different forms of that, I have my 7th grader at home that I have him physically hold a book and also listen to the audio. So he's got 2 forms of input for comprehension to make sure he's getting that. So when, he can really have it sit with him and remember it when he has to come to doing the different kinds of projects that they're forced to do. And so a lot of things I see also within schools, not knocking schools, but some as they get older too, like the love of reading kind of fades with some of the projects they have to do on that level of academia. Where my kid loved to read, if we're just in the car and doing it for fun, but that anxiety of having to get this dang project completed, like, and just hating it and not wanting to start another book because this project's just really frustrating him, to have to do it on that level. I see. So it's interesting to come from patron world or being the parent, and in the mix of it. But I love to incorporate all the resources that we have that we otherwise wouldn't have in the library, through the state and these other resources I like to gather, of what I can use when I am presenting something in the library, especially if it's with my STEAM club kids or summer reading based on the topics that we're learning there, to really have them engaged in multiple ways, I think is a really great way to take in that literacy. If you're visually seeing it, you're hearing it, and then
Making
you
a
have
connection.
something that's stimulating as far as it's getting acted out, like you said, in front of you. So that I feel is important, and not sticking with a linear form of trying to learn your literacy. So
Thank you for that viewpoint, Tara, because we were talking about, the students with disabilities and anxiety, that's a big piece of it. And when you look at the state report card, 68% students with disabilities are non-proficient in South Dakota. That is not okay. So kudos to all the libraries, all the educators, all the programs that are working with everybody. I mean, this is like, that whole saying back at not so many years ago, I don't want to date myself here, but the whole "it takes a village" thing. It's true. And with literacy, even more so. Doris Ann, you've been in the library world too in many different respects. What can you speak to from the library point of view on early literacy?
Well, first I'd like to say the reason that we talk about 4th grade reading scores is because that's kind of a key time. And like 75% of kids who aren't reading proficiently by 4th grade, they don't catch up, and they're kind of sentenced to a life of struggle and being on social programs or incarcerated, different things. There's a whole documentary about it. It's called Sentenced, and you can watch it on Peacock, but it has some statistics there. But then the highest predictor of 4th grade reading scores, what it's correlated most with, is a kid's reading readiness when they get to kindergarten. So those early literacy skills are really important. Reading to kids before they get to school cannot be overemphasized. But I do think that that's why we had the 1,000 books before kindergarten program and all that, because that's such a key thing. And I do think that the science of reading based curriculums, that we're on the right track with that. And I think that that it will help us not have so many kids slip between the cracks, because some kids can learn whole language, balanced literacy. They're going to learn it every which way, but then some were not learning it. And the curriculum we use at our school is called 95%. And it's because if you teach with this curriculum, this explicit instruction that builds on each other, that 95% of kids should learn to read, and we'll have to have interventions for those who aren't in the 95%. But the emphasis on decodables and the mechanics of reading, the libraries were about the joy of reading, and everybody is going to have to share that joy of reading and help kids want to learn to read. The read aloud is going to be more important in an age when kids are learning the mechanics of reading. So librarians reading aloud to them, teachers reading aloud to them, parents reading aloud to them, and giving them access to books that they're not able to decode yet, and modeling to them how a book should be read and with expression, and how just modeling to them how you can enjoy a book. And so I think the read aloud is increasingly important in a time when the reading instruction is more based on the sounds and the mechanics. And I do think we need to have that. When I came into the school and kids would want to read to me and they would get to a word they didn't know, it wasn't like when I was in school and we would sound it out. We'd keep our eyes on the word and sound it out and figure out what the word was. These kids would look around at the picture, they'd look up in the air, and they'd guess some word that started with the same letter. So it wasn't working for them. I didn't understand what was going on with that, but I took, so that money, that $6 million is to teach the teachers and everything. So, because these teachers, they've been taught during a time when they were taught like the Lucy Calkins method, the 3Qing method. They don't know how to teach this way, so they have to learn how to teach this explicit instruction kind of method. And that's what that money's for. And I'm glad to see there's some money, federal funding, $13 million proposed in next year's budget. So I hope that that we can do more. Oh, I do want to add one thing. I don't know if anybody's listened to the Sold a Story podcast, but it talks about the reading wars. But last week's episode is really cool because it talks about an outlier. So usually income and literacy are they're aligned, but there's the outlier in Steubenville, Ohio is one of them that they focused on. And despite being a low income area, they score in the top 10% in the nation on their reading scores. And 93 to 100% of their kids at that school are reading proficiently. And they have preschool. They offer preschool, and it's free to 80%. And the people that do have to pay only $100 a month. And some other cool things they do, they make those young kids, those preschoolers, talk to them in complete sentences. I think that's something parents could do instead of saying, which ice cream do you want? And they just say chocolate. You could say, make them say, I would like the chocolate ice cream, please. Or just get them used to talking in more complete sentences, engage with them, talk with them, sing to them, all those things that we should be doing with little kids before they even get to school to focus on the mechanics.
Yeah, I really like what you're saying about what we can do like before kids are even in traditional school. At Black Hills Reads, we do a lot when it comes to trying to encourage parents to read with their kids. We have programs like Baby's First Book Bag, which is all about basically giving parents who are traditionally maybe more at risk or low income, or parents of kids who are between the ages of 0 to 2, usually, we try and give them a bag that has some board books in it, some different resources about where you can go to get more resources. We have sign-up sheets for information at the library and our Dolly Parton Imagination Library program. And basically, we're trying to teach parents that, or just how important it is to read to your child every day. Like, that's one of the best things you can do to help your child become or build those literacy skills. It's just reading to them every day, whether or not they are engaging with you, or if you think they're not engaging with you, you have to still keep at it every single day. And then, of course, like one of my favorite things that we do at United Way is our Dolly Parton Imagination Library program. And so we cover the entire Black Hills region, but they also have a lot of different clubs throughout the state. So it most likely you'll be able to join the program even if you're not in the Black Hills area. And basically what's great about that program is that everybody 0 to 5 can sign up to get a free book sent to them in the mail every month for free. And that takes the guesswork out of, are you going to be able to afford to buy a book for your home library? Are you going to be able to get to the library to borrow a book? Because transportation is always an issue as well. And so I just think it's really, there are a lot of different resources out there for parents, even if they are struggling or if they're struggling to find ideas for how to promote literacy with their child. There are a lot of different things out there that you can do outside of like a traditional, maybe preschool education program. And there's a lot of things you should be doing to really set your child up for success. And especially when it comes to, trying to get kids to love to read, because obviously if you love to read, you're going to be a little bit more likely to build those skills and take all of that in. So we do things like reading challenges, like Race to Read, and we do things like bringing authors into schools so that the kids can actually interact with the person who wrote the book. And that's always fun and gets kids excited about reading. So there's lots of different things you can do outside of just curriculum and that kind of thing.
And I'm glad you popped in there, Anna, because you were next on my list, because you guys at the Black Hills Reads program, you also have a lot of great programming going on. I know you've mentioned a couple of them, like Power Hour and Baby's First Book Bag, and the Race to Read Challenge, the third grade writing contest, and the community bookshelf. They're great programs. And I did put a link in the chat for anybody who's interested in signing up for the Imagination Library that Hannah was talking about. I signed my granddaughter up for that, and now she's in kindergarten. She's well past 5 years old, but she could read those books now because they were read to her. And even before she could, before she got used to the story, it's also creates creativity, where she was making up stories that went with the pictures, so and literacy starts small, I think, in just the smallest of ways. But I also I want to include with the discussion with Hannah and Black Hills Reads, and with Laura as well at the Statewide Family Engagement Center. We at the South Dakota Humanities Council have the Young Readers One Book program. And Hannah and Laura at their organizations have been tremendous assistance with our program. Laura and her staff they have created the supplemental materials that go with our materials for teachers with the books. Basically, the Young Reader One Book program is, and Jennifer Widman, our South Dakota Community Council Center for the Book Director, is on this Zoom, and I'm looking right at you, Jennifer, so I'm going to ask you to step in too. But last year, we had the tremendous honor of distributing 15,000 books to every third grader in South Dakota. And I get a little choked up when I talk about it, because it's just such a great opportunity and a great program. And Black Hills Reads is hugely instrumental in helping us distribute those books. The thing is, all three of us, the Black Hills Reads, Statewide Family Engagement Center, South Dakota Humanities Council, we're all nonprofits. So we're doing what we can with what we have. Jennifer, can you talk to us a little bit more about the Young Reader One Book program and how it operates and what the goal of it is?
Sure. Hannah and I actually were just on a call, I think it was yesterday, unless it was the day before, because you know how those days run together. And we're talking about, where this started. The Young Readers program at SDHC has been going on for since 2014, and it started kind of serendipitously when Candlewick Press was looking for groups that wanted to do a common read for kids, like so many states, universities, some cities do for adults, like our One Book South Dakota. And the author that they were suggesting, among maybe 2 or 3 others, was Kate DiCamillo. And we thought, well, we can't pass up the chance to have her come to our state, talk to our kids. So we selected one of her books. We gave it away to a couple thousand kids that first year. The idea being, what can we do at that crucial 3rd grade year? And we've already talked about why it's so crucial and why 4th grade is so crucial, to just add a little bit of a spark of excitement for reading, to make sure that some of the students who don't own a lot of books or have a lot of books in their home have something that's age appropriate and engaging. And so we tested that out, and it's still going. And as Stacy said, the last few years, we've finally gotten to the point where we can buy enough books and distribute enough books to get them to all the 3rd graders throughout the state. It's only one piece of the journey, but once we saw that very first year, how excited these 1,000 to 2,000 third graders in Sioux Falls were about meeting the author and cheering for her books, and, you know, raising their hands with all sorts of questions, and coming in the next day saying, I illustrated a book last night, you know, because I saw this, I met this author. That excitement is really something special, we think, that really helps. It also provides a role model for creativity. I think a lot of kids don't realize until they have these school visits that authors and illustrators are just people. They used to be kids, they liked stories, they just didn't quit drawing or writing or telling their stories. So here we are, and we really appreciate the connections we have, as Stacy said, with Black Hills Reads and Statewide Family Community Engagement Center, because I feel like they're covering a lot of ground, a lot of ages, and we're focusing on this kind of not culminating, but an important part of the stage of the third graders. But it's much more impactful because of the groundwork that you all have already laid among your communities and kids for their reading. So we're super excited. I think Stacy has the book.
I do. Want
Yeah,
to announce it?
There you
Wow.
are. We're giving away 15,000 copies of Wings of an Eagle with the Gold Medal Dreams of Billy Mills, which is such an inspiring story, co-written by Olympic gold medalist Billy Mills and Donna Janelle Bowman, illustrated by Lakota illustrator SD Nelson. It's just a really inspiring, wonderful story of someone who grew up right here in South Dakota, faced all kinds of adversity, and became the first and still the only American ever to win a gold medal in the 10,000 meters. So I think that's going to be really inspiring for kids of all backgrounds. So I've gone in lots of directions there, and that's probably more than you need, but yeah, we appreciate so much what's done here, and we want to do our little part at that third grade stage to really make that a little more exciting.
Thanks, Jennifer. You explained it much better than I could have, because, you know, I would have gone on a rant, you know, a rant there forever about it, because it's such a fun program. I know I get to speak with the principals and the administrators that we send the books out to make sure I got the right numbers and sending them out to the right places. And one of the principals that I spoke to last year or the year before, I can't remember now, but he said, so how much is this going to cost us? And nothing, you know, these are free books we're sending to your third graders. And he got a little emotional, and he said, you don't understand, these kids don't have things of their own. So this is something that they get to keep. And it kind of goes deeper than that, because in terms of our conversation here, this is a book and this is just a piece of the puzzle, but the literacy piece, being able to read that book, is a 100% necessary skill to have for their entire life. So, you know, coming back around to the discussion about what could we do and what's going on now, I'm so excited, and I'm sure all the educators and librarians involved here are thankful for that $6 million that we're looking at, and you know, putting some effort into addressing this literacy issue. But we need to do more. I remember back when, okay, so once again, I'm showing you how old I am. And some of you on the call on this Zoom might remember too, it was the pizza. It was there were free pizzas. Like if you read a certain number of books when I was in elementary school, there was a program, and I can't remember the name of it, but if you read so much, you know, so many books, you got a free Pizza Hut pizza. And it was, yep, a personal pan pizza. And what an incentive. And I mean, maybe that's why I'm kind of a book nerd now, because I also like pizza. But there was also, back from way back in the day, the Book It program. Thank you, Jennifer. It was the Book It program. There's also, I'm going to put a link in the chat one more time for another opportunity that's out there, is the Reading is Fundamental program. Does anybody have any background, or who can talk about the Reading is Fundamental program one more, just really quick, like?
I know
So they had it at my school when I was a kid, and we'd get to go choose a free book on occasions. I don't know if it's only available to schools that meet a certain income threshold or not. I don't hear about that nowadays, but it was a factor in my life when I was a kid.
I know that there's, so Reading is Fundamental. They have a lot of resources online now, where you can basically find some different, either, I like to call them like maybe like book resource guides or something like that. And along with different activities that you can do that focus on a specific book, which is really helpful if you're trying to increase engagement around reading a book, if you're trying to increase those literacy skills. And they also have fun games and different things like that. I'm not sure, or I don't know too much about the different programs that they put into schools, but I know that the online resources have been very helpful when it comes to just individuals looking for different resources like that. And I believe those are free and available online.
Yeah, and I did post the link I found for Reading is Fundamental program. It does look like they have some good materials there for it, you know, just everybody. I'm going to open it up now. We got a couple minutes left. Tell me what you think. I just want to know that I know there's a lot of librarians here, and obviously everybody who's on this Zoom is concerned about literacy and education literacy. So, Jean Kirschman, hi. I haven't seen you in forever. How are you?
Good.
What do you have to share, Jean?
I just think we have to, and I think all the examples followed this, we have to follow the two-pronged approach. We have the science of reading, which backs up what we're doing, and along with it has to be the joy of reading. And so all these programs we were talking about today, you know, included that joy of reading. And so even for myself, I have to balance that. And so I get more excited in the high school about the programs and projects without as much of the science. But like we are doing March Madness, and we're going to do series this year. And I've had over 100 students give me their input of what series they think should be on our March Madness this year, which I think is fantastic. So that's just one thing that I noticed, that we've got the science of reading and we need the joy of reading.
Absolutely. It kind of goes back to the sentiment that before they have to develop the love of reading, they have to learn how to do the reading. Mm-hmm. And I, you know, a love of reading, I think for most of us that are avid readers, that's why, because we learned at a very young age that books are fun. You can go anywhere in a book. You can have an adventure, you know, and so it's pretty amazing. Does anybody else have any comments, questions, concerns?
I just wanted to say, like you said, the important part is that we're all working together. We're all partners in this, our libraries, the Statewide Family Engagement Center, Black Hills Reads, the Humanities Council, and that whole effort along with our schools and families is how we're going to see the greatest success.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, I want to thank you. We're getting to the end of our time here, and I do want to thank everybody for joining us. Thank you for your input. Thank you for all of you for the work that you do, for the care that you have for this issue. It's not going to be an immediate fix. Obviously, it's going to take a little time, but I think if we're all on the same page and going for the same goal, we're going to do a whole lot of good for a lot of kids. And those kids are going to be adults one day. And, you know, this is how it starts. So I do want to invite you all back. I did put a thing in the chat. In a couple weeks, as you know, we do Humanities Cafe every other Thursday. On Thursday, March 13th, we're going to have Dr. Jenna Borseth from University of South Dakota and Dr. Lucas Wiskins from Northern State University talk with us about a new thing in South Dakota. It's called the Safer South Dakota Reentry Initiative. And basically what we're going to talk about is incarceration in South Dakota, the recidivism rates, education programs, the other programmings that are available in our correctional system, and what the Safer South Dakota Reentry Initiative is for preparing these South Dakotans and you know, just members of society to come back out and be productive and be successful and not, you know, reoffend. So we're going to be talking about that in a couple weeks. I hope you all can join us for that episode as well. In the meantime, thank you to my wonderful guests today. Thank you for everybody who attended, and I hope you have a wonderful rest of your week. We'll see you soon. Thanks. Bye-bye.